All right. If you just want to put your headphones up, and then just talk into the mic, make sure we get a good level for you.
Sure. Test, test. 1, 2, 3, test. Okay. Good day to be in East Lansing, and happy to be here. And the studio is very organized and neat and clean.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so what I'm gonna do is do a quick intro, and then we'll get right to you. All right?
You got it.
All right, fans, welcome back to the CBR. Okay. Excellent. All right, fans, welcome back to the CBRE Martin Spartan Sports Network studios for another edition of From the Dugout. I'm Rob Bennett, but enough about me. We are just a little over 1 week away from the 2017 Michigan State baseball season beginning down in Abilene, Texas on February 17th. And today we're going to go back in time just a little bit and relive some of Michigan State baseball history, as I'm thrilled to be joined in studio by Spartan baseball alum Mr. Hugh BAVER. Sir, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for taking some time out. I know you're a busy guy.
Rob, I couldn't be more happy to be here, and very interested to be a part of this program and talk about the past, as you would say, the old time.
All right, let's get right into it. What is your earliest memory involving baseball? How did you get into the sport growing up, and like I said, what's your earliest memory?
Probably my earliest memory is when I first tried out in Little League. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Buffalo, New York area, and there was, at that time, baseball was a huge sport. In the springtime, that's pretty much all that you did. There was no lacrosse, track, spring soccer. I mean, baseball was pretty much it. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to my mother dropping me off at the field with high anticipations and hopes of making the team, and seeing that there was a tremendous amount of kids there, mm-hmm. and being a little bit intimidated, like, wow, this is really popular, and you're going to have to be pretty decent to play. So that's not a question I thought that I would be asked, but looking back, I'd have to say it'd probably be one of my first memories right there. Probably was 6 or 7 years old, first Little League tryouts.
And did you play other sports growing up, or did you?
I played basketball a little bit. I was always tall and thin, so that was always a good sport for me as well. Never good enough to play even in high school level, but just enjoyed it. In fact, I actually think a lot of playing basketball helped me a lot with baseball, and pitching particularly, just shooting a lot of free throws and those kind of things I think really helped build up my arm muscles, which later I think helped me.
Now, what was it about baseball that really connected you to the sport and really wanted you to, growing up and getting into high school and things of that nature, what was it that really just brought you to America's pastime?
Boy, I think my favorite color was always green. This is kind of interesting because it's a tie into all that. I remember
very apropos here.
Very apropos. But I think when I was 5 years old, I got a green birthday cake because I told my mother I love green. Mm-hmm. So as it turns out, at that time, or even later during the early 70s, 72 to 74, mm-hmm. I really had an attraction for the Oakland A's. The Oakland A's were mm-hmm. green and yellow. And that whole era with Reggie Jackson and Joe Rudy and that whole World Series team, they actually won the World Series 3 years in a row. Those were the years that really captivated. So actually at that point I was 12, 13, and 14. But those were the years where it really captivated me to love the game and really watch it. I remember that's when Sports Illustrated was really coming to the mm-hmm. forefront. Mm-hmm. At that point, there was no social media other than just you read stuff in a magazine.
What a concept!
Yeah, what a concept!
Newspaper and magazines. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually remember cutting out pictures of the Oakland A's, specifically team and other baseball players, and making a collage on my bedroom wall. And so to me, it was like every day and every night I would go to sleep. I'd see the wall. I'd think about baseball. I'd start to see the scores. At that point in Buffalo, New York, there really was not a team other than the Buffalo Bisons, which was a AAA mm-hmm. affiliate. So I didn't have a real team that I really had a familiarity or love with at that point, other than the Oakland A's, and predominantly because of their colors, their flair, the swinging A's at that time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the team that really got me fired up about baseball. And as it turned out, all my Little League teams I played on all turned out to be green and yellow uniforms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of just fits, right?
It feels that way.
Yeah. Now, you were a right-handed pitcher, correct?
Correct.
Pitcher. Now, obviously in high school we played different positions, and what made pitching it for you, and what other positions did you play growing up and things of that nature?
For the most part, because I was always very tall and thin. In fact, actually, even here at Michigan State, my freshman year, I think I was 6'4", 145 pounds. So I was always very, very thin.
Mm-hmm.
I could run very quickly, and generally when I didn't pitch, they put me at first base for my long legs because I could stretch and get the ball. Maybe that was the best place to hide me other than pitching. I wasn't always the best hitter, for sure. So my competency and proficiency was pitching and my arm. I did play the outfield as well because it was nice to make a long throw in from the outfield. Mm-hmm. But probably that, pitching as much as possible. They didn't have any inning control things as they do these days with little leaguers, so you could pitch as much as your arm could take it. But then usually after that, it was first base and potentially outfield.
All right, so you come to Michigan State. We're going to get to that process. You come in as a walk-on.
Yes.
So take me through that decision-making process and were other schools maybe interested? What was that whole process like for you trying to decide where to go, or did you even think about going into athletics, baseball in a college setting?
Well, I'll tell you, I think I'm one of those folks who, if you tell me what I can't do or tell me that I can't do it, it actually fires me up and motivates me in another way. And as it turned out in high school, I didn't really have the best relationship with my high school coach, and I'm not sure why. And at that point in time, I think some of the best players you see, they peak typically later. You know, the ones who are the little leaguers who have hair on their chest that you remember hitting the home runs, those big guys, they generally, by the time they get to middle school or then high school, they kind of peter out and plateau. And it seems to me it's the ones who are kind of thinner, who start to fill out later, that, the timing of all that is important. So my high school coach, I think in high school I was a 500 pitcher and a starting pitcher. But then after my senior year, I mentioned to my high school coach that, hey, I'm looking at trying out for Michigan State. And he said, don't even waste your time. You'll never make it. So there's motivation for you.
Sure.
Huh?
Yeah.
So I took that summer in between the end of high school and the freshman year, still playing in summer baseball leagues, etc., and really did the best I could to work out, get in shape, and get mentally prepared, and came up here and pretty much just walked into the office. At that point in time, I was in Jennison Fieldhouse, and Frank Pellerin was the assistant coach. I remember walking in and meeting him, and in those days you had to go in and say, introduce yourself, and it wasn't kind of like send an email and maybe they'll reply.
Right.
You had to have the gumption to get and walk in and say, hey, I'd like to play, and I played in high school, so they had, he afforded me the opportunity to have a walk-on tryout, which, based on my preparation, I think my excitement, I did very well. And I made the team. I think I was one of the only folks who made the team as a walk-on that year, actually. And this may be one of your next questions, but it's certainly a memory that I want to recall, and that's the day that I realized that I made the team, where they posted the list on the coach's office window. And I remember I lived in Hubbard Hall at the time, being able to, when I saw my name on the list, my heart just jumped, and I remember practically running back from Jennison Fieldhouse to Hubbard Hall, like skipping and dancing, whatever would be the appropriate way to say it. But very, very excited to have made the team, and then from there, being here for my freshman season during the big, Triple Crown Big Ten season with Magic Johnson. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that for a freshman year here at Michigan State. So that was quite a great experience, and has stayed with me and still with me.
Sure. Now, what was the biggest adjustment for you? Well, first let me ask you, coming in as a walk-on, did you feel, and especially with the story you just said about your high school coach, did you feel like you had a chip on your shoulder? Did you feel like you had something to prove that I can pitch at this level? Or were you just happy that you were able to come here and compete and be at that level? Right when you walked in, what was your attitude coming in?
Definitely had a chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. And it wasn't as if I just wanted to prove my high school coach wrong, as opposed to I really wanted to play. I loved Michigan State. I wanted to play in a green uniform. There were probably a lot of other subconscious things going on at the time too. But that definitely was a huge factor. And then just the whole competitiveness and the chances, just the overall chances of making the team. And, there's a lot of factors at play. You have to make the right play in front of the right coach at the right time. And these are things that a lot of people don't really think about until later on, and then they look back. But
Sure.
I remember one time I went, I think the first time I went in, and they put me in, I think I struck out the side. I had so much adrenaline, and I was so pumped. And some of these guys I was pitching against actually were the varsity members of the team. So I remember that was a very exhilarating experience, and I think you never get a second chance to make a good first impression, and I think I really did at that point, and that lent itself to me making the team that year.
Now, was there anybody on the team when you made the team that you kind of looked upon, or maybe someone took you under their wing a little bit, or were you just basically just trying to find your own way and fit in when you could, or was there teammates that you really looked upon to say, hey, and kind of not studied them, but watched them and watch how they prepared and things of that nature?
Oh, that's a great question. I think actually the catchers, because the catchers are obviously, we have to build rapport with the catchers, and there was I think the 2 or 3 catchers that were there. They always have a lot of extra ones to to catch the pitchers and on the sideline as well.
Sure.
And I think I recall a couple of friendships. One of the gentlemen actually lived in my dormitory in Hubbard Hall, and we would walk over, and his name escapes me at this point, but looking back, I'd have to say there was no one specific, but I certainly built a great rapport with a couple of catchers that were urging me on or saying, hey, wow, nice pitch there, or you should do that again. And they were very encouraging, and obviously that's the kind of dynamic and the relationship you have with the catcher. So I think there were also a couple of other, this is interesting in the sense that we don't know what questions you're going to ask me, so it kind of jogs my memory a little bit.
Fire away. Yeah.
Fire away.
Yeah.
But there were also a couple of old gentlemen. In fact, I remember Ken Mihal specifically was very, very nice, and still is when I still see him at events. He was very, very encouraging, and there were times where I went in and I was pitching against the varsity team. Even at that point there was a JV team and a varsity team.
Right.
But the programs were still melded together, and so much as they were separate, you still pitch batting practice to the big guys and all that, which is neat. And I remember a couple of instances where I think it was Ken and a couple of the guys, they just get a little nod like, geez, nice pitch, or okay dude, you're good, kind of thing. So those little encouraging things.
Well, that had to have definitely boosted your confidence a lot to see that for sure.
Tremendously. Well, you want to feel like you're kind of part of the club too, and not an outsider, and you want to feel like you belong. And sometimes it's a very competitive environment, no doubt. But you're lucky sometimes to find yourself with folks who will take you under their wing and kind of give you that encouragement, which makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
If you feel that others are rooting for you as well.
For sure. Now, what was the biggest adjustment for you pitching from high school level to the college level? Was it the speed? We hear all the time when whatever the sport is, the speed or just the quickness and things of that nature. What was it for you being a pitcher? What was the biggest adjustment for you?
I think it was knowing that I needed to get certain pitches in certain locations over with consistency at different times. In high school, you had, maybe half the players were good and the other half I wouldn't call automatic outs, but if you were a decent pitcher, you generally could get through the front part of the lineup and then the bottom part of the lineup. As long as you were throwing strikes, you'd be okay. And when you moved to the next level, there really wasn't a bad player. I mean, they all had to be good to get to this level, and it required you to really have an acuity and focus on, hitting that outside corner, or you couldn't get away with the same kinds of pitches. And I think I learned that pretty early, even in batting practices. Some of the practices where high school, I could just throw a chest-high fastball and blow them away, and I threw it here and watching it go over the fence. So I think it was that. It was location, understanding that I had to kind of tweak my game a little better, and also kind of focus the mental energies to a higher degree than I had before to succeed at this next level.
Did you picture yourself as a power pitcher or more of a like a Greg Maddux, like just more cerebral, picking the corners type of thing, picking your spots type of thing?
I'm laughing a little because that was probably the farthest thing I was. I wish I was a little more cerebral, frankly. I think it was more, looking back, the one thing that I wished I would have concentrated on more and even emphasized more was a change-up. because nowadays it's all about not just location, but obviously changing speeds.
Yes.
And so I didn't really develop a changeup in high school because I really didn't need it. I could really get away with a slider that I threw, and my fastball, which moved. I have long arms, long fingers, so the ball did a lot of tailing off,
Yep.
which was nice. But yeah, I think you just had to really be much more focused and kind of in the zone, so to speak, and really concentrate on each and every hitter. And whereas in the past, I could get away with being a little more flamboyant and just knowing that with my fastball or my slider, I could get everybody out. But this whole experience of coming to the next level definitely reoriented my thinking and my need to kind of tweak my game.
Now, we're going to talk about a couple of head coaches here. I believe Danny Litweiler, easy for me to say, and Thomas Smith. Were those the guys? Did you, because there was a coaching change. Were you in the midst of that? Were you on the team with the midst of that?
I was,
okay.
Rob, as a matter of fact, and that I think is also what kind of played in the destiny of the whole thing. As I said, I had a great tryout when I was a walk-on. And after that season, I came back the following season, after making the team as a walk-on, coming back my sophomore year, and I got cut. I got cut from the team my sophomore year, and which kind of left me feeling terribly down about it, especially after the previous year, the Big Ten championship year, and everything like that. And you always kind of look back on those times and say, what was it? Was it that bonehead play when I didn't cover first base, or because I walked more people? You could drive yourself crazy up at night thinking about it. But for whatever reason, that was the second year trying out when Danny Litweiler's final season. So I pretty much ended up watching that season, my sophomore season, which I guess would be considered redshirt because I played the following 3 years. From the stands, kind of sitting in the corner and longingly looking out there like, oh, I used to be out there, look at me now. But once again, that kind of served to really motivate me and say, hey, you still have 3 years of eligibility left, and, let's stay at it, and maybe you'll get another chance. And as luck would have it, or not, Danny Litweiler retired that year. It happened to be Tom Smith's first year. Tom was my coach in the JV program, and he and I had always gotten along great. He actually was a catcher. I have the best thing to say about all the coaches, Danny Litweiler and Frank Pellerin and Tom Smith.
What's your best memory of Litweiler? We'll get to Coach Smith here in a second, but what's your favorite? What are a couple memories with Coach Litweiler? I heard he was quite the card.
Yes, the skip, as they would call him. I think my best memory was when I finally realized the magnitude of the man that he was, as it related to kind of being the mad scientist of baseball, having, that was the first year that the radar gun was implemented, which of course is now used all over. So Danny Litweiler, the inventor of the radar gun, and I was in the program the first year that they were using it. He also, so in some ways, a little bit starstruck between that and the drying compound that he invented, which, again, these are little-known things I think people don't realize today, but he really was way ahead of his time. We had mirrors that we set up. We were throwing against mirrors. This was in Jennison Fieldhouse indoors, plastic mounds, never having the advantages like the folks down south have of playing outside all year. But, I think that was my best memory of him, was that he had a group of his senior and junior players, which really were his core, and people he had known for a year. And I think he just looked at me as kind of like, God, this guy could be either really great or really bad, one of the two. But that was it, just being kind of starstruck at what he had done for the sport of baseball. And again, now we can't go anywhere without seeing a radar gun. Every time I do it, I tell people
I didn't know that.
played.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I did not know he was the implementer of the...
Oh, I encourage you to. He actually had a number of other notable inventions as well. So just it was a real honor to have played under him in the program. And it's funny, there was one of the articles that came out in the paper when I came back and Coach Smith brought me back onto the team as a junior, and one of the articles was said something about in Danny Litweiler's doghouse was the exact thing, and I didn't really think of it as the doghouse. I wasn't like a bad guy or anything like that. I had a few bad outings, I think, and he lost confidence in me, and ultimately that's why I was cut. But Tom Smith was very, very encouraging. I came back again. I did the same thing I did from the high school year. I used it as kind of a chip on my shoulder. It worked out. made the team again and made it to be one of the top 4 starting pitchers. In fact, me and John Leister, most of the articles we look back, John Leister, the former quarterback for the Michigan Panthers, and he ultimately played for the Red Sox, by the way, made it all the way to the Red Sox. In fact, I'm hoping I'll see him Sunday night at the baseball banquet.
Sure, awesome, yeah.
That was just a thrill to, to make the team and be a starting pitcher again after being cut. So I actually would like to know how many people have ever done that. Made the team as a walk-on, been cut, and then come back the next year.
What was the conversation with Coach Smith and you, and what sort of advice did he give you? Any advice when you came back, and now you're one of the top 4 pitchers for the team in the rotation, things of that nature? What sort of advice and what sort of things did maybe you do different?
Well, I knew that he had a really good idea of my talents because unlike Coach Litweiler and Coach Pellerin, who were predominantly focusing on the varsity team or whatever, Coach Smith was my coach. So that whole first year when I was playing for him, I think I was 2-0 or 3-0, and he just was very, very encouraging. It's just amazing how much good support and encouragement can help a young player. And he just took kind of a personal interest in me, and then when I came back and I was prepared that junior year, he was the head man and said, "You're on the team. Here we go."
Wow. Yep. So he just saw from you from the get-go, right? Yeah.
Apparently.
Now I want to go back a little bit, back to your freshman year. I wanted to ask you, obviously you come in, Big Ten championship. I mean, unbelievable. You talked about Magic Johnson, that whole aura,
Morton
that whole
Anderson,
time frame. Morton
Gibson.
Anderson, yeah. I mean, we can go right down the line. But for the baseball team, going into that and being able to be a part of the Big Ten championship, what do you remember most about that team? And do you remember a certain time during the season where, like, it seemed for the team, did everything click? And when did these guys realize, hey, you go into the season with a lot of, obviously goals, and we're going to hit these goals. But during the season, ups and downs, just like any season. But when was it that this team maybe thought, wow, we're going to get it? And how cool was it and how fun was it for you, being a freshman, just having that success, the team success right away?
Well, the interesting thing about the baseball season is that it's the last of the 3 sports. So, again, coming in as a freshman, just adjusting to the campus, the university itself, and then watching the football team win at that point they actually won the Big Ten championship, but they didn't go to the Rose Bowl because of a violation they were seeing over. But they still had won the big championship, and they had some really big-name players on that team, too. Like I said, Morton Anderson, the field goal kicker, and Eddie Smith was the quarterback. So I remember in my dorm room I had a huge poster of the Spartan football team, and so it was almost like building to a crescendo, where here they had won the Big Ten championship football, and everyone was all fired up on campus. Then we come into the basketball season, and of course, Magic Johnson and Greg Kelser and Mike Donnelly, and that whole magical ride, no pun intended. Actually, probably was a pun intended, but it was a good
We'll take it. Yeah.
We'll take it. And so it kind of almost felt like it was building to this. And then when the baseball season came, and we went for spring training down at that time, we went to McAllen, Texas, which is in the Texas border, right next to Mexico. Oh my gosh, the name escapes me of the town on the other side of the border, but it was just a very exciting time. Right from that, everybody I think was already kind of fired up, saying, "Wow, this is our year, and boy, if we can only win the championship in baseball, we'll have won this Triple Crown," which doesn't happen. I know we've actually come close the last couple of years, though, which is remarkable achievement. But I think as the year went on, and as the team, it's always about kind of it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish. So I think we just peaked at the right time at the end, and the team really gelled, and it was kind of I hate to sound really, it was a team of destiny. It really seemed like it was a team in an era and a year of destiny. So just being a part of that was, again, thrill of a lifetime. It doesn't get any better from a freshman year at college.
And they were, for you individually, as you went through your junior and senior year, 3-year letter winner, correct?
Actually not. This is, I didn't actually win my letter until I was a senior, my last year playing. And that was because I played just almost up to the minimum of what would require to win your letter.
Okay.
In fact, the funny part is I remember getting my letter jacket, and I already had like almost graduated, and then I was going back to graduate school here. I was a graduate resident advisor at Shaw Hall, and I remember feeling funny putting on my letter jacket because I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm not even playing anymore, and I'm a graduate student. You know, I finally had gotten it, but I played many innings, but I didn't qualify to get the letter until 1983.
Okay. So, what is, I guess, so much ups and downs during Michigan State. Now you're graduated, although you come back and for baseball, I guess you would say. You're done playing for Michigan State baseball-wise. Was there what was your mindset as far as trying for, we'll get to your minor league things here in just a moment, but what was the mindset your last game and knowing what maybe was next for you athletically and on the baseball field? Was that really going through your mind, or did you just want to concentrate on the schoolwork and the things of that nature?
Well, I think this is a place where I want to be obviously as authentic as possible.
Sure.
And I think everyone who's at that point, when you're that old, and I encounter this now because I do coaching now, I do coaching clinics. I'm working with the Red Sox and their Dominican operations. We'll get to that too. But
sure.
I think everyone at that point thinks that they're going to make it. You know, you just have very,
Absolutely.
very high hopes. So you say, I've made it this far, and geez, I must be this good. And plus you feel kind of pumped on yourself. And I absolutely knew, because my parents were very emphatic and always have been about education, the value of education, which played very heavily into my future. But I still thought, hey, I'm peaking at the right time. Like I said, I think I was one of those folks who was I was physically growing into the time at the right time. And so I ultimately, after actually from graduate school, I went out to California. Actually, my daughter was born at that time, my oldest daughter. And I played in the Winter Scout League for the Oakland A's Winter Scout League team, and it was based out of Orange County, California. And we played in a tournament at that time, which was the predecessor to the current World Baseball Classic.
We're going to get to that, yeah.
Called World Open. And so, and again, the team I played on was Oakland A's colors. It's just strange how the green and yellow just keep coming around, or certainly green is the central thing.
Sure.
But, you know, yellow was the sun, green was the grass, I don't know. But I hope I'm answering your question here.
Like I said, you're next.
So I still thought, absolutely,
yeah,
I'm going to ride this out. I'm going to play this out. I think I'm good enough. I've already beat the odds to come this far, so why not? And so that's where I continue to try and play.
I also want to talk to you about, very important, the summer leagues when you were here at Michigan State. We're going to backtrack again. Sorry for keep backtracking.
No problem.
But how important was the summer league scenario in your development for Michigan State? We have great relationships here for the baseball program during certain summer leagues. Guys go off and obviously learn a lot because that's when you look at the summer league, that's basically a Major League Baseball schedule. I mean, you're playing almost every other. You got like 2-3 days off. Yeah. So, how did that help your development also when you were able to do that?
Obviously, I look forward to the summer at any time because summer always relates to baseball to me, which is always my favorite time of year. Warmth, the whole thing.
Sure.
In fact, right now I'm in my dark period between now.
I think
and
we all
baseball
are. I think we all are.
So we got another week to go.
Yeah.
But I played for a team called Detroit Jet Box, which was down in the Detroit area, and they were the big. I forgot the name of the league, but they were a very accomplished league where a lot of folks who, if you look back on people who played in the league, Dave Rozema was a pitcher for the Tigers at the time. Yeah. There were many folks who made it big who were playing in that league at that time. So it was very highly competitive. A lot of, you had to really devote yourself to baseball. I remember taking lots of drives around Detroit to Sterling Heights and to, like I said, you're really jogging my memory, but it was a Detroit-based league where we would play in different locations around the Detroit area, but very big schedule, aggressive schedule. Thankful enough to play on a team which we won the championship every year, won the Michigan State champ. It was not MSBL, it was, you have to look it up. But no question that's a big part of continuing to have the ability to play. And here, again, with the weather and the season here, you're really at a disadvantage compared to these community colleges in Florida or places that can play all year round. So I didn't even really peak until midsummer because, again, we weren't playing with plastic mounds and netting up in a gym, or the early parts of the season here where it's rainy and cold.
Sure.
And it's just nice to play in a hot summer night, and those were
It's
the
different,
best memories that I have.
Yeah, and it's different. I mean, when you get to play outside instead of indoors, you can talk about the aesthetics and things of that nature, but mentally it's different too. There's other scenarios that happen.
Indeed.
So, yeah. So, all right, you coming out of here at Michigan State, going through your minor league, take us through the draft process, things of
Sure.
that. Take that whole thing and what was that whole scenario like for you?
Well, again, I really had it in my mindset that I was going to see it through and I was going to try as best as possible. In 1982, I had a tryout with the Red Sox down at spring training, and at that time it was Winter Haven, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
It was a thrill of a lifetime because I actually got to meet, Joe Morgan was the coach from Morgan's Magic. He was the one who actually brought me in for the tryout, and I remember probably the thrill of a lifetime was meeting Ted Williams because I came in to check in, and he was hitting fly ball fungos, Joe Morgan, to other players, and I see this figure walking across towards him, and until I really realized, oh my God, this is Ted Williams, and so Joe Morgan said, Hugh, this is Ted Williams. So Williams, this is Hugh, and he shook my hand, and it was one of those I'll never wash my hands again thing.
Yeah.
And he. Ultimately, I had read his book, The Science of Hitting, which was a big, at the time, book. Unfortunately, not that it helped me much with hitting, because as I said, it wasn't my competency, but still unbelievable that I had that particular tryout. And then after that, I had another tryout with the Red Sox in 1984 in Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah.
And it was actually, made up in 84, was the same year that Mark Fidrich played for them, where he pitched for the Tigers, and then he had arm trouble, and he had a rehab stint at Pawtucket, and so I also went down and tried out for Joe Morgan again, had still an interest in me, and tried out again. I didn't make it. In fact, at the time, I think he said, you're about this much short. Okay. And I was like, what does that mean? And what that meant was that I needed to get the ball there just a little bit faster. I was a submarine pitcher. In fact, if you look back even on some of the articles here, that said, he's one of the toughest pitchers to hit on our staff, throws from so many different angles, never know where it's coming from. That's actually a quote from Frank Pellerin. It's in the State News. I actually still have the paper, but I think that kind of ended up starting to take a toll on me and on my arm, because I really wasn't consistent with throwing over the top, and I was kind of coming from all different angles. And what worked for me in high school, and I was successful with in college, when you got up to the pro level, they wanted to make sure you were a little more refined in your delivery and your options. So ultimately, I didn't make that team either, but again, got to meet Mark Fidrich, who was my idol when I was in high school, the Bird, number 19, which was the same number I had at Michigan State, was number 19. And then, again, when I went out to California playing in this Oakland A's Winter Scout League team, and there were guys like Mike Norris on the team who used to pitch for the A's, and it also was kind of a rehab team of some drug addicts that were rehabilitating, and that wasn't me, by the way, but it just happened to be on the team. But it was a great experience to be out there. We would travel around to like Indio and to places, Bloomington, Fullerton, California, around the LA area, all those little towns. That was when there was a lot of smog too. I remember that. Actually, when I came from Michigan to there to play, you'd come and you'd see the mountains, and half the mountain was covered with smog up to the top. It was an interesting adjustment. But anyway, as a result of playing on that team, it was called the Orange County A's. I did very, very well there. I was the top pitcher there, and then we went on to play in this first commemorative World Open baseball tournament. It was held in Palm Springs. And I got to pitch there, and then we played against teams from Japan, Cuba, Australia, Korea, and it was a thrill because before each game you exchanged little trinket things.
Sure.
It was a really neat experience. But and then from there is where I was recognized by the A's, and at the very end of the season, I wasn't drafted. I mean, I was in the draft list. I had draft and scouting reports all over. And I threw up to about 90 to 93 was my scouting report. but ultimately was just a sign for just a few games at the end of that season. Kind of
But what a treat for you, being an Oakland A's guy, fan. I mean, dream come true.
Yeah, tomorrow night I get to meet Mark Mulder too, which is blown away by that. Another Michigan State pitcher.
Sure.
Anyway, the following year I went to spring training and I didn't make it, and I was released. And I'm trying to think, there weren't too many memories of that other than I was fortunate that I had a degree, and I remember when some of these other folks were let go. I remember this one guy sitting on the bench next to me, and he was going back to Mississippi to work at a gas station, and that was his life, And I at least had an undergraduate degree, I had master's degree work, and I guess that's kind of something that I've tried to communicate to other players too. And in so much as you got to go for it and go play, try, you have to have a backup plan.
Sure, absolutely.
And I'm glad I had the educational backup plan that I did, which ultimately led to my business career afterward, and allowed me the chance to kind of give back and do things in baseball otherwise.
Sure.
Which I'm probably sure you'll be asking me about.
Yep, we'll get into that. But I wanted to touch base. You talked about facing other teams from Japan and Australia and
Cuba.
Wow.
That was the first time Cuba had been to the United States as a team in like 40 years.
Wow.
I still have the newspaper article about it. It was amazing, and they actually won the tournament. They were that good. I mean, the players were like the level of professional, major league players from Cuba.
Now, what did you learn pitching to those different styles? I mean, obviously, different countries, different scenarios, different mindsets. I'm sure you have quite a few stories with that if you remember.
I remember low and outside as much as possible because they were very, very strong. They could lift the ball. There was a caliber of player that I had never ever seen or played against, and it just was an amazing tournament. The interesting part was that ultimately the tournament had to not fold, but they put us up in hotels there, and I guess it's Palm Springs, California, and these were some of the best players in the world. Like I said, kind of the precursor we see today.
Sure.
But no fans came to the game, so I remember the last couple of games they sent a note out that said, "We're sorry, but we can no longer pay for your hotel bill to stay here." I still have that letter as well, but it was just a very, very fun experience and added to everything. And as it related to later on, where ultimately I was able to acquire this game used first base from the World Baseball Classic game, that was a great, who would have ever thunk it, I guess, sorry Mom, think it, back then. That things can lead, thing can lead to another, and that's exactly what's happened in my baseball career.
Absolutely. And you said, when did you realize, you know what, baseball, I have to move on? You talked about the importance of having the education after your athletic career. So what kind of things really went into that for you mentally? Because obviously you got to change completely your thought process. Yeah. So what sort of things led you to that?
There was no question. The biggest thing was my daughter.
Yeah.
My daughter, my oldest daughter, who actually saw her last evening, her name's Rachel. She was born out in Los Angeles, and I realized I had a little deeper responsibility that I couldn't. It's not as if I was chasing butterflies or there wasn't a legitimate attempt for something that could work out.
Sure.
But I think it comes to a point when you say to yourself, okay, you've taken this pretty far. Looking back, I almost say, geez, I wish I would have still gone back and tried. And I had an opportunity to play for a team called the San Jose Bees, which was part of that California League.
Okay.
And they also had some interesting characters that were on that team. But at that point, I think I'd already made up my mind that I needed to get a job because I wasn't really getting paid anything at that point. And so I took a job in downtown Los Angeles and working for a steel company called Jorgensen Steel in downtown Los Angeles, and did that whole commute. And I just realized that it was, it's funny, I really don't know other than just an intuition at the time that told me. But certainly the birth of my daughter and the responsibility of having children makes you reorient your thinking.
Yeah, but baseball always has stuck with you. I mean, we're going to talk about the first base, Dominican Republic related win. So was, I guess, coaching ever a thought for you? Did you ever, I mean, even when you were in college and going through the minor league thing and learning from some of the great minds that you were able to do, was coaching ever an option for you, or did you just need to cleanse yourself from baseball for a little bit?
You know, I don't think you ever get it out of your system.
Yeah.
To be truthful, I don't. You have to have it to some extent. You know, I thank all the friends, family, and girlfriends who put up with me for always watching the games and having it be such an obsession
Sure.
for me over the years. But no, I think I went back after all that and came back to the Detroit area, and I coached my old high school team. So
Okay.
I kind of came back and, you know, did spend some time there, and in the interim, even in years past here, probably the last 5 to 10 years, I've done a number of, you know, coaching clinics where I would go to local high schools or
Sure.
teams and just watch some kids pitch, and then I give them my suggestions and hopefully give the same level of encouragement actually that I receive, which I think makes a huge difference. You know, if there's one thing that I really noted is that there's no difference typically in any given city. It can be Los Angeles, it can be Bumpkinville, Arkansas, or wherever. You typically will have a composition of the same types of players. You'll have tall, thin ones, you'll have shorter, heavier ones, you'll have, you know, the same general makeup of a team, but it is the coaching and the fundamentals and getting that down which makes all the difference in the world. You know, hitting the cutoff guy at, you know, learning those kind of important fundamentals at an earlier age, because I've seen teams and coaches who don't emphasize that, and ultimately they don't do as well. So I just think what I believe the most is that typically in every area you're going to have kids with the same general physical makeup. It is the coaching that makes the difference, whether between motivating them and teaching them the skills, techniques, and you know, the right things to do.
I'm going to bring up a name that hopefully David Henderson.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
David Henderson.
You have quite a connection, I guess, so to speak, if you want to tell that story, because I think it's great.
Sure. Thanks for researching it, I guess, to understand it. And I just actually learned that he's just passed away, I think, this past year, which I didn't even know. But I had the pleasure of, you know, when I was living in Los Angeles and I was doing the job at the steel company and my baseball career was over, and I had the opportunity to come back to New Hampshire to my uncle was running a real estate business.
Okay.
And at the time I was speaking to him on the phone, he called me up, and it was during the Angels versus the Red Sox, 1986.
Oh, yeah.
Season where they came back miraculously. So I remember I was on the phone, and my uncle said, I think the Red Sox were down 3-1.
Correct.
And
I know this. I remember this.
Okay, good. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
You're from. So the
Yes.
Red Sox were down 3-1, and I remember Donnie Moore was the pitcher for the Angels, who was the great closer at the time. And so I happened to be on the phone with my uncle, and he said, "Well, Hugh, if because I wasn't necessarily overly enchanted with this job working in the steel company and all that,
Okay.
it's almost like I needed to change, but." He asked me on the phone, okay, so if the Red Sox come back and win the series, will you come back and work for me in this real estate business in New Hampshire? So I said, his name was Ralph. I said, sure, Ralph, sure, yeah, whatever. And I was thinking that was about the chances of when the Patriots just came back and won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The same type of deal. And so I said, sure. And sure enough, hung up the phone and in amazement watched the whole thing. So then Dave Henderson was a very key part of that whole comeback. So when I think about in my own destiny, my own life, and playing career and otherwise, it was his efforts and his home runs and everything that propelled the Red Sox to win that series ultimately. And I was at a point in my life where I said, you know what? Why not? I'm an extremist, so what's more extreme than Southern California to New Hampshire?
Right, yeah.
So made the move, and then ultimately in 3 years ago, 2010, I decided to go to the Red Sox fantasy camp.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
And that was another thrill of a lifetime. So I really prepared myself. I worked out. I got in great shape. I wanted to have a good showing.
Sure.
Especially being a former ball player, I didn't want to be one of these guys who, you know, didn't at least look like he was a ball player.
Sure.
So went back, and he happened to be there as one of the celebrity folks and coaches, and I was able to tell him the whole story and how much he had played into my destiny and playing. And ultimately, I got a picture with him on the dugout, and then had a story written up in New Hampshire about it afterward. And it was actually at that same camp when I had met someone named Felix Maldonado. He was the longest-standing Red Sox. He never made it to major leagues, but he was a coach for 46 years. Actually had a field named after him, Felix Maldonado Field at the Red Sox spring training facility in Fort Myers. And So I thought it was just wonderful meeting him, but and especially after that and telling that story. And then it was at that same camp that I happened to win the Cy. When it happened to win, I earned it. I won the Cy Young Award at that, and being in shape for preparing. And again, this wasn't like playing against major leaguers. This was maybe 4.5 of the 9 players I consider decent, and the other 4 were definitely automatic outs. If I just got the ball over, it'd be okay.
Sure.
But I think I struck out like 32 of 36 people.
Yeah.
So it impressed.
People took notice of that, for sure.
Even though I was an old guy. So that was, I think, Oil Can Boyd was my
I was going to drop
coach.
some names. Oil Can Boyd, Frank Viola,
Bill Lee, Spaceman Lee, and Louis Tion. Those are all the folks that were the celebrities on campus for that event, and just had a wonderful opportunity to get to know them, and they took a personal interest in me as well and befriended me. And actually, Oil Can Boyd, Butch Hobson was the one who, the first game that I pitched in that, I pitched a one-hitter and one in a shutout and struck out like a lot of guys. And he, after later on, we went out for dinner, and he said, you know what, I'm interested in having, I know this sounds crazy, coming down and trying out to play professional again with the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs, which was he was the coach of, which was a professional level independent team. So I was like, well, talking about the rookie, this is the real rookie here at age, I was 49 years old at that point.
Yeah.
So anyway, from there, that following summer, I played I was on the same team in Providence, Rhode Island League, in the MSBL, Men's Senior Baseball League, with Oil Can Boyd. So he was kind of what a character he was. There could be a whole show devoted to this interesting moments with him.
Sure.
But anyway, so it was a thrill of a lifetime, and I think I was 2, and the whole idea was I was going to pitch that summer to prep for going down for the tryout with Butch Hobson and this team in the fall or the late summer. And as it turned out, I was actually having a really good year. I was 3-0, and I remember the game specifically, and it's ironic because it was against the Dominican team based out of Providence. Providence is one of the largest Dominican cities where they have in the whole Northeast. And I remember that I had a drive from New Hampshire down to Providence for the game, and then participated in the game. I don't think I even won that game, actually, but I remember I was trying to throw and even overthrow. And afterward, my coach at the time said, okay, well, you got a long drive back. Don't you want to ice your arm? And I was like, you know what? I'm fine. I just want to get home. It's a 3-hour drive home and all that. And sure as heck, that particular game, I went to a doctor after it, and I had severely stretched my medial collateral ligament in my elbow. But you know what? This is from years and years of mileage, like a car on your arm. And ultimately, I had to not play anymore. That's what pretty much retired me. It wasn't like I could have, but as if I was going to do Tommy John surgery at age 49 to continue to play baseball. That would be really far-fetched. I felt that I had already taken it pretty darn far.
Sure. Wow. Yeah.
And so, that's what ended the baseball career. And but some tremendous memories. And then from there, I took that to the next level of just getting involved with probably other questions you have coming about the MSBL, or excuse me, the World Baseball Classic Base donation and all that.
2013, Dominican Republic, and the first base donation. Take us through that process of your thought process to give back to the Dominican Republic, and just being able to be around the game in that way. It's a different scenario, different mindset, but you're still in the game that you love and being able to give back. And obviously Dominican Republic is a huge factor in all of baseball.
3 out of 9, and basically a third of the players.
So just take us through that and some of your memories for that.
Yeah, I'm a collector of sports memorabilia of sorts, but I'm not your standard collector of just like cards. And not that there's anything wrong with it, because I do have a few cards, but I like kind of obscure items. Like I was able to purchase from Cy Young's house when he had an auction house when he died, and I was able to acquire, still waiting to find out a value of it, a Cy Young signed deer antler from 1926. I have a photo of it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and Ted Williams' glove that he used in minor leagues that he signed, like one of those gloves that didn't have the finger things through it. So those are some examples of some of these kind of obscure items that I have. And so when this bass became available, I thought for my own collection, well, hey, I played in the predecessor to the World WBC. I've been to the Dominican Republic, and I've visited the DR and the Red Sox Academy, so why shouldn't I have this? And it was an online auction, and the auction closed at, I remember, 3 a.m. in the morning, and I remember being awake, like wide awake. And I remember pushing the send button on my last bid for it, which I think was $1,500 or $1,600 for the bass. I remember I couldn't even afford it, but I said, I just have to have this.
Sure.
I'll worry about it later. And sure as heck, I won that bass. That's got back the notation. You won the bass, and it'll ship to you. And ultimately, it arrived to me on the day of the Boston Marathon bombing.
Wow.
And that was everybody, of course, at that point was severely overtaken with emotion, and it was just a horrendous day, and I know you know this well, Rob, but so I just thought, what can I do to help out? And as it turns out, also my son was having some challenges with a rare disease that he's being treated out of at the Jimmy Fund in Dana-Farber Cancer Institute.
Sure.
Jimmy Fund is associated with the Red Sox, actually the oldest charity there is.
Yep.
Any sports charity is the Jimmy Fund. So I don't know what made me think of it, and I had this spirit other than saying, what can I do to help? So I decided that, you know what, I'm going to call up the Red Sox through the associations I'd made at the fantasy camp and otherwise, and offer to donate this bass to the Red Sox and to the country, Dominican Republic. So I called them up, and they said, sure, we'll take this bass, and they arranged for me to meet Big Papi at Fenway Park, which again, another thrill of a lifetime.
Sure.
So I came there. Now the bass was already signed by Bob Costas. It was strange, I don't know why, but Bob Costas, the famous Olympic announcer, NBC announcer, he had signed the bass, and so I brought it with me to Fenway, and they facilitated my ability to meet him. And David is kind of taken around by handlers, and he has so many different obligations and things. So they brought him in on a golf cart, and he was kind of standing there, and like, okay, here I'm David Ortiz. And I'm not sure how much they actually filled him in ahead of time, what was going to happen. But I remember the conversation that he started to really warm up when I said, I'm giving this to, I want to present this, give this to the Red Sox and give this to the country. As he had just done that speech like a week earlier. That
the world famous.
This is our what city.
Yeah.
And so I presented the bass, and I even have the camera projection of him starting to talk to me and kind of look at me funny, and then seeing him warm up to the point where actually at the end he was like beaming and smiling. And I remember him saying, thank you from our country for doing this.
Wow.
And
that's another moment, right?
Could not be a higher compliment paid. And so I had a week between then and the time that I was going to fly to Santo Domingo to present the bass to Jesus Alou, who I'd met. Jesus Alou is one of the Dominican godfathers of baseball down there.
Moses Alou and...
well, there's the three brothers, which is Matty Alou, Jesus, and Philippe.
Yep.
Moises is the son of Philippe,
yep.
I think.
Yep.
And so during that week period, I wanted to showcase this bass to the largest Dominican communities in the area. So I went to Providence, Pawtucket, the Little League, the Boys Club, the Girls Club, Jamaica Plains, Lawrence, Massachusetts, which is a very large, actually the second largest Dominican community, I think, next to New York City in the whole United States. And it was a thrill because everyone there knew the significance of it, and everyone wanted to get a picture of it. And I made up a banner that said in Spanish, "The Dominican community of New England supports the Red Sox," and that's where when I went to these schools and they all signed it. And the whole idea was to have a connection between these kids, who generally in Boys and Girls Clubs are not in the best situation, to give them a little bit of hope and inspiration, and for them to make a connection with their beloved Red Sox. So I brought the bass as well as the banner signed by all these kids over on JetBlue Airlines, and it was just quite an odyssey and quite a journey. I don't think I've ever seen them hold an airplane on the ground for an hour and a half longer than they should at JFK. It was JFK because of this, but my plane was out of Portland, Maine, was delayed. So I wasn't able to, I was kind of freaking out, like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to miss my chance to meet Jesus Alou and do all this. So the folks at JetBlue were just amazing, and the guy in Portland, Maine called the guy in New York City and explained to him the magnitude of what I was doing. The base was so big in its protective cover that I couldn't even fit it on. I couldn't put it in the overhead, and I couldn't put it under the plane. And I'm very thankful to the folks at the the security folks from the Federal Aviation Authority who, at the Portland Jetport, when I first got there, because I had put some dirt that I had gathered from all of the Red Sox affiliates.
Lowell Spinners,
Lowell Spinners, the Portland Sea Dogs, Pawtucket Red Sox, and then Fenway Park, and I had all this gravel, and I put it down as a base, magic dust or whatever, and then put the base over it, and I put an acrylic covering on it, and so when I got to security, they almost didn't let it go through because they said, well, this could have fertilizer in it, and the fertilizer is a bomb-making thing. So I was like, oh, I've come this far only to be stopped. But I think they were very sympathetic. I'm not saying they broke any rules, but they were amenable.
They understood,
They understood the magnitude of it. They let me go through. The plane was late, and they literally held a flight on the ground for 90 minutes past this thing for me to come one seat with this base. So here I am running through the airport, get to the airport. Everyone had literally mad look on their face. Let's put it that way. They're like, why the hell are we waiting? Yeah, it's this guy we're waiting for. But I think then they made an announcement of the plane, then what it was, and everybody clapped, and then I was able to get off the plane in Santo Domingo and was greeted by the JetBlue staff there, who also had a big Dominican flag, and people were clapping, and I think at that point I really realized, oh my God, this is maybe even bigger than I thought it was going to be. And then only to bring it the next day to Jesus Alou's office there in the Red Sox Academy, or Academia Medias Rojas in El Toro, and only to have, again, the complete fortune of running into Pedro Martinez, who happened to be visiting that day. So I was able to snap a photo of me holding this base with Jesus Alou on one side, Pedro Martinez in the back, and me on the other side, and in the backdrop, there's two mahogany, like really fine statues. They do this very fine mahogany work, and one of them was David Ortiz, the other one was Pedro Martinez. So it remains there, and from last time I talked to Jesus' assistant, it is now going to be the permanent entryway greeting piece of the Red Sox Academy for now till perpetuity, I suppose. And so to have my picture embodied with David Ortiz, the greatest, one of the greatest Dominican players of all time, at the Red Sox Academy, because I sure as hell wasn't good as the Yankees, right?
Right. Of course not.
Was great. So
what a story. I mean, it's an amazing journey for your baseball career and post-baseball career, I guess. So it's amazing. Job well done, for sure. All right, I'm going to give you a couple of questions here. As you look at the sport of college baseball now, I'm going to put your commissioner hat, I guess you could say. Give me a couple things that you're excited about college baseball now, and maybe some things you'd like to see develop more within the next 5 to 10 years. If you had the power one day to do that, what would it be? What were some of the things it would be?
Okay, let's see. Let me give me a second to think about this. I know one of the developments, which I think is still the case, again, as much as I stay connected to the Major League Baseball and the Red Sox, and certainly Michigan State baseball, I know the advent of removing the aluminum bat, which I think they no longer use aluminum bats in college, I don't think.
I believe they do.
They do?
I believe they do, sure, yeah, I believe.
Okay, I seem to recall that the big challenges and transitions that I saw was folks who were great in college hitters that, when you take the aluminum bat out of your hands, you go to regular bat wood that you have to in the pros, it was a difference between warning track power and hitting a home run. And I thought that, I don't know where I got that from, Rob, that to tell you the truth, or I don't know, but I think that should be, if I had to cite something as far as what I think should happen.
As a pitcher, you would change the bat. That's nice.
Yes, I make it like thinner, like a pole, and 10 inches.
No, it's just interesting hearing from a pitcher that you would go ahead and go with the wooden bat in college. Is that what you're
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what? I would go. So I would definitely go far to say that. That's only because when I grew up, there really wasn't. I didn't have aluminum bats till I was like in high school. So I used all through Little League and up wood bats.
Okay.
And like I said, I know a lot of players that when they don't manage the transition when they go from college level to pros as a hitter, and
Right.
it's because you just don't have the same. First of all, it's dangerous for the third baseman and the pitcher
Well,
how hard they can
absolutely.
hit the ball back. It's frightening, and I've been hit a couple times on comebackers up the middle, and so I would say if that hasn't happened, and again I apologize for my not having current knowledge about it,
Sure.
I would certainly advocate for
We
that.
have an edit button. That's a beautiful thing.
Good. So I guess I'd like to see that, and the only really exposure I have to college baseball is if I catch it in the background. I have kind of a busy work life
sure.
now, and otherwise, I really don't give it the kind of attention I'd like. When I do have time, I watch the Red Sox. And I keep up with Michigan.
God bless you. Yes.
And I keep up with Michigan State baseball and sports, of course, as well.
Sure.
Sure. And by the way, that was actually one of the biggest thrills for me as well, from Michigan State standpoint, is when I went down there and delivered that base during that occasion. Also was able to help facilitated the meeting of Jake Boss and his son to meet Jesus Alou.
Wow.
And snap a photo with him. And apparently last year or the year before, they now send a representative down every year,
Correct.
which
Yeah.
I'm not going to say take credit for, because I give all credit to the Lord above, but I know I helped to make that happen. And if that helps Michigan State baseball or develop the program, or maybe they could play over there in a tournament, that would be a thrill.
How cool would that be?
Yeah.
Right. Now, I got to get you're going to be the first person baseball-oriented that I ask this, because this is something developing that has come out here recently. Changing the rule in extra innings. Apparently, starting in the 10th, they're going to start doing this maybe in the World Baseball Classic, and start doing it in the lowest of minor leagues, whether it's the Penn League or Single A, we'll wait and see. But apparently what is happening now is they will place a person on second base starting the 10th inning as you bat. Now, I want to get your opinion on that. Being a pitcher, would you, to speed up, everything has to speed up. And for me, baseball for me, I like the fact that it's different, and it's not about speed. That's what makes
I'm with you.
It makes
I'm
it
a
unique.
purist. I'm a purist
Right.
in that sense, and I think even in college football, they changed the rules. You start on the
Sure.
20-yard line, and you do all that overtime thing. And I realize it's about time, but baseball is the only sport where there is no time. Time can go on forever. The Pawtucket Red Sox played in the longest game ever in the history.
That's correct.
With so many innings. So I think it comes down to a battle of wills. I know they think that it's fair to start someone on second base. Actually, I think they call it the California rule. There's a name for it, because I had heard about it, and they tried to implement that in some of the amateur leagues that I was in up to like 3 years ago.
Okay.
So I think I actually
So you
did
have
that
heard it,
once.
yeah.
I think I actually participated in that situation once.
Well,
I can't recall
right.
exactly when. But I don't know. To me, there's just something about a clean inning. Being a pitcher and just being a purist of the game, I just think I'm already disliking some of these other. Baseball and all sports are a game of momentum and momentum shifts, and I think anytime you stop the game, disrupt the game, stop to look at a video review.
I was going to say, you into the instant replay, or would you? I mean, you want to get the call right, but I think human error is part of the game, is it not?
Again, because I'm 56 years old here, I have this idyllic notion of how it always was and how it always should be. But I also realize there's the practical nature of it too, and I think it just should be only used in very, very specific instances, which, again, compared to other sports, I think baseball has done that. I think they've at least refined the aperture to just be specific situations. But they did without it for God knows how many years before, and to me it's all about disrupting the continuity of play, and that is what baseball is. It's when the team is coming back and the momentum in the dugout, you're all fired up, and all of a sudden be like, stop, we're going to do a video replay, and
it sucks it all
just
out.
it just sucks it out, and I think that's distracting from the game. So if there's certain circumstances, if it's the end of the game, it's the game-winning play or something like that, and it's that close and it needs to be evaluated, then I guess I'm for it. But I still, just watching the game from the couch, sometimes get frustrated. And I'm not even on the field. And I'm just saying,
oh, sure.
And you have better television coverage of you can see it better from the review of the TV. You say, okay, obviously that was a foul ball.
Right.
So I like I said, I don't want to sound like someone
That's
who's a grumpy old man.
No,
here,
that's all right.
That's what that's what I like about the game, and if it made you play into the midnight hours, then that's something you'll have to think about for the next few days.
Yeah, it's funny that, again, you being a pitcher and taxing arms and taxing your bullpen and things of that nature, it's interesting to hear it from a pitcher's standpoint, that you want the game to continue. You want, if it goes 15 innings, 17 innings, so be it.
And if you have to put in the catcher, your second baseman to pitch whatever,
Yeah.
then you have attrition, and that's what you got left. And it comes down to the battle of attrition in games like that. If you're all out of pitchers and you got to use other infielders. That's the whole whatever complexion of your team.
Yep. All right, let's talk about, again, and go back to Michigan State. Jake, you mentioned him earlier. Head coach Jake Boss Jr. and, of course, Jake Boss Sr. You were able to meet them. And what they've been able to do for this baseball program since his and Jake Boss Jr.'s inception in 2007, I believe, with the facilities and just the overall, and just the overall excitement he's been able to build, not only in Michigan but in the Midwest, because Midwest baseball sometimes gets the rub the wrong way, But seeing Indiana in the College World Series a few years ago, and seeing the facilities and universities putting money into programs like that, and Jake Boss being able to do what he's been able to do here over his 7 years now, or over 7 years, I think it's his 9th year now, and just be able to, the awareness of college baseball here and its importance here. Just your thoughts on him and what he's been able to do to push the program to the next level here.
Well, I got to say, from an alumni standpoint, it's very notable because in today's day and age, when you're deluged with emails and it's very difficult to get back to people, I think that the whole alumni relations with the program are huge. Not just because I could give $1 million donation tomorrow. It's not because of that. It's just we as former players really want to stay connected to those glory years and those times. And in addition to Jake just being an outstanding person because he's never not returned an email of mine, he's never not returned a phone call. Yeah. I mean, he's outstanding in communication. I mean, to the point where if I send him an email or even about something, I know that he'll at least acknowledge it and send it back, and that's a lost art in general. And I think in his coaching capacity, you have to be an administrator as well as a good coach and an example. And I think you have to fire in all those cylinders. And I think that, from my opinion, and from the periphery of not playing under him, but working with him from afar, having him come down to the Dominican when he did, the continuing communication that I have with him about pushing out that these events are happening, and here's the latest from the Spartans this week. I mean, when you're an ex-player and you're in the middle of a busy work week, it's a refreshing email to get.
Sure.
It's very personalized, and so I think Jake has personalized this program to an extent that all of us former players can really have that pride and that connection, which I didn't have before. Frankly, that never happened before Jake. If I came back to campus, I'd have to force myself to stop by the thing or say I used to be a former player. Hi, who the hell are you? I mean, he's taken a lot of time, and I'm sure this is indicative of not just me but others to really get to know some of the former players, even to the extent of this facilitating this opportunity to tell my continuing story, because there's life after baseball. Michigan State was a great backdrop for my professional career as well, and the baseball part was just the cherry on top
of the iceberg.
And then ultimately the tip of the iceberg, and now here I am all these years later coming back and going back to the banquet on Sunday night.
Yeah, speaking of that banquet, the first pitch banquet,
yes.
Jack Morris, Mark Mulder, speakers, former, as we mentioned earlier, former Oakland A, former St. Louis Cardinal, of course, more importantly for everybody here, former Michigan State alum. Just how excited are you? And many others are coming back also, but Jack Morris, obviously his son played here.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
actually,
his son was also a walk-on here.
Really?
Yeah,
we're in good company.
I had an interview with him a couple of weeks ago. He's still in the area, so it's. And other former players obviously will be around for this great event on Sunday. Just how excited are you? Just to be a part of it, as you were just mentioning, the communication and the welcoming back scenario, and just being able to be a part of it. I know you were here for some other things also, but to be a part of that, and how much are you looking forward to what should be an outstanding event on Sunday?
Well, I'm I'm choosing my words carefully because as it related to these events that I came back for, this speaking engagement I had with the Alumni Association and the College of Arts and Letters last evening was wonderful, and I'm very passionate about that and history in general. But you know, this is Jack Morris is like from the roar of '84.
Yeah,
I mean, this is like right in my wheelhouse of the days when I lived, drank, and ate baseball, and that was my life, and that was the same year as Dan Petrie. I mean, it's amazing that the folks who were really into baseball, you can like remember every team, every player, every position.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm hoping, I'm going to say I'm counting, I'm feeling confident I'll at least be able to get a photo with Jack Morris, which would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And also Mark Mulder, obviously a former Stater and Oakland A. And this will actually be the first time I've ever attended this event. I've been back to the golf events. They've had the Forest Acres, they've had the Varsity S alumni event, and they also have had the baseball team event specifically, and I went to both of those. Again, between Mark Hollis, and it's just always a first-class event. Just coming back here is always first-class experience. And I'm not just saying that because I went to Michigan State. I actually have a very high critique on customer service, too, which is part of what my business career ultimately was afterward. But I think it's going to really cap off my entire weekend here at Michigan State.
Yeah.
And I can't wait.
Yeah. Now, for fans, what are you doing now? What are some of the things in the fire that you got going right now? Well,
one of the things that was really a great follow-on, again, to the whole Dominican piece and that relationship was, it wasn't even last summer, it was the summer before that, boy, the time is flying by. I was able to coordinate, I was contacted by a team from New York City who asked me if I could help to put together a tournament of a team from Mono Guayabo, which is Pedro Martinez's birthplace, in Providence, Rhode Island. And so I had contacts in Providence, Rhode Island, and actually one of the folks I visited with the base before I went down and donated it was the mayor of Providence, who was Dominican.
Yeah.
So I had a relationship with the city of Providence already in that Dominican community, and so they, it was wonderful to have this opportunity to be asked if I could direct this tournament. So I named the tournament the first annual Future Hall of Famers amateur baseball tournament. And so the city of Providence donated, actually the college there, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. It's a very famous, Johnson and Wales College donated their field for the championship game. And so I coordinated teams from Lawrence, Massachusetts, from Jamaica Plains, Boston, again, huge Dominican community, from Providence, and then this team coming in from New York City, who were made up of players from Mono Guayabo. So this was just before Pedro Martinez's induction into the Hall of Fame, and so we held this tournament, and the whole idea was, again, to kind of cross-pollinate these players, have them meet their brethren, have a highly competitive tournament, which did happen, and it was a lot of work. Let me tell you, a lot of work, and a lot of unexpected things happened, including, I was going to say, I was actually slated to sit in the first row of the Pedro Martinez's induction to the Hall of Fame, but unfortunately my brother-in-law passed away that same weekend, and I flew back from Providence directly to Detroit here for that funeral, and I missed that. Again, I wouldn't be anywhere but at the funeral, but it just was a wonderful experience to get these kids together, and even though it didn't ultimately end up to, we tried to get fans to come and have people, it wasn't kind of like the World Open baseball tournament that I played in, where they had high hopes of all these people coming to watch. We didn't have the level of attendance that we had hoped. Even actually asked the Red Sox, believe it or not, would even participate. It was very odd. That's a whole other story. But it at least was another opportunity to work
get
with
the word across. And
get the word across. So that's kind of the side interest that I have in baseball now is working to develop these exchange programs between the country, the Dominican Republic, and New England communities to have their players come here and stay in households in Providence that are, or in Boston, Jamaica Plains, or Lawrence that are well chaperoned. Because the thing I learned from Jesus Alou and going down there was that the biggest adjustment is the cultural adjustment.
Yeah.
They're great ball players, but they don't know about money here. They don't know about dating girls here. There's things they don't know about.
It's a whole new world.
It's a whole new world. So that's a big part of their adjustment is that. And I'll briefly want to tell a very short story, which I think is worthy of telling, and to me it's hilarious. But Jesus Alou told me when I was down there sitting with him, when I went for that trip where I donated the base, that again, this adjustment period, and adjustment, which is one of the most difficult things. They're great players. So he told me about this story about this guy who was, the Red Sox drafted him. He came from the Dominican countryside. He could throw through a wall, a big guy, and they all brought him in. They're all excited about it. And when he came to the cafeteria, and he actually was trying to get milk, it totally short-circuited him that there was milk coming out of a machine instead of an actual cow.
Sure.
Because he was used to being on a farm and getting milk from a cow.
Technology is,
And it completely overwhelmed him, and actually to the point where the guy ended up blowing up and not playing anymore. So that was an extreme example of how he told me that the cultural adaptation to both coming to a Dominican academy and then ultimately, if they're good enough, coming to the United States is very, very notable. So anyway, anything that I could do, this tournament was part of me trying to fulfill that exact goal and bring in some Dominican players, have them at least interface with younger, with players from the U.S. and let them talk in Spanish with each other and say, hey, this is how it works. And I hope I accomplished that in that tournament.
All right, two-part question before we let you out of here. It's been a great conversation. Thank you again.
No, thank you.
First, we'll get with Michigan State. I know you try to keep up with them, but your workload kind of prohibits you to kind of keep track. But your expectations this year for Michigan State, the past couple of seasons,
right there. Oh, right there.
Got to get over that hump right there. You know, it's the next step in the program, and no question Jake Boss and his staff will be able to do that here. But your expectation, first question to you is your expectations for the Michigan State baseball team this year.
Great question, and obviously I'd like to think third time's a charm, and I'm speaking in the sense of I know the last couple of years they were right in the running to be another Triple Crown team there. So if I'm not mistaken, in both the past years, the state won the Big Ten Championship in football and then basketball, and it was leading up to them winning the Big Ten Championship in baseball to equate to that same 3-year level, and they got about as close as they possibly could. So I just have between the players that Jake has been able to draft and to bring into the program, and then again his complete competency in coaching, and I think you have to work with a team for 4 years from the time you get them as a freshman to develop them to when they're seniors. And again, another reason why I think Jake is outstanding. He does an outstanding job of that. So I'm not hesitating only because one of my favorite sayings is third time's a charm, or 3 strikes and you're out, being a pitcher. So I'm very enthusiastic and optimistic that this year is going to be a great year for him. And what he's already done with the program is already tremendous. He's already exceeded, I think, folks' expectations, and there couldn't be a better man at the helm for the job. And I'm just very thankful to know him, have an association with him.
All right, and for me personally, being from New England, got to ask you about the Red Sox. Right? Got to ask you about the Red Sox.
The Patriots.
Well, we can talk about that. That could be a whole other hour about the Patriots. I don't know if people around here would pay real attention to that.
Yeah, it goes over
but,
lead balloon here.
Right.
Big Papi's beaten the Tigers many times.
Well, my wife, I got to tell you, my wife is a huge, diehard. She's a big sports fan, and obviously Detroit teams being grown up. But baseball is her favorite time. I mean, she loves the '84 Tigers growing up, and of course. We talked about them a little bit. And Big Papi hitting that home run and Torrey Hunter overrunning it. And the Bennett household was at odds that evening. I'm not ashamed to say that I was sleeping on the couch.
Good friction in a marriage, I heard.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm not afraid to say that I slept on the couch that evening. But it was okay. It was worth it. It was fine. But your expectations, Red Sox always in the hunt, always marked, as you know, but the moves, and again, a person you've met, Dave Dombrowski now, head of that, your expectations without Big Papi retiring, he could still play, no question, but your expectations for the Red Sox for this season?
Obviously, it's a lot of very big shoes to fill.
I don't think you'll be able to.
Yeah, when you have someone who's that kind of a cornerstone of an organization and a leader, civic leader in the city, and otherwise, a clubhouse leader and all that, it's definitely going to be very difficult to fill his shoes. I mean, I have a lot of faith in John Farrell and also
absolutely.
in Dave Dombrowski. And like I said, I really consider myself very lucky to live in New England. Being a sports fan and living in New England
spoiled.
It's a spoiled, amazing privilege. And actually, I have people like hate me for it.
Well, sure.
I go to Seattle for a business meeting, and if I even mention I'm from New England, I get leered at.
Well,
they hate me because
you
everyone else is like the redheaded stepchild to New England. They win all the time. If they're not, the Bruins aren't winning, the Red Sox are winning, and the Patriots are winning, the Celtics
are winning.
So it's a really spoiled environment living there. But I feel this year. I will begin to follow it very, very closely here.
Mookie Betts.
And Mookie Betts, look at all of the
Jackie Bradley
offensive
Jr.
numbers. They have so many great young players.
Xavier Bogaerts. I mean, it's never ending.
It's never ending. And they keep bringing folks up who fill the bill. And there's always, every year, I think the part I love most about the Red Sox and baseball in general is that there's always guys who you anticipate are going to be great. You're bringing people with big contracts. We'll say David Price as an example. And then people who you expect to do fantastic do average, and then you have these people who you don't expect anything out of who end up filling the bill and doing tremendously. And that's
Rick Porcello. I mean, he signed a pretty big contract,
from the Tigers.
But from the Tigers. But who would have thought he would have been 22-game winner and a Cy Young Award winner coming in when you have Price and you have other guys on that.
Yeah, and now we got Chris Sale who came in from the White Sox.
It'll be interesting.
It is all about pitching. I don't care what everybody says.
Of course,
It always comes down to it, and it's the battle of attrition at the end of the season and all that. So I'm hoping, again, with a solid rotation and middle relievers and closers, that the Sox are going to be very, very competitive this year. As always, it comes down to injuries and things like that and other intangibles that make it happen. But it's also the chemistry of a team. You being a fan, I mean, I can actually watch a game, and I'm as interested as watching the shoot into the dugout as I am watching the game, because that tells a whole other story.
Sure.
You watch the Red Sox the years they win. Dustin Pedroia, and they're all up on the steps. You can see
the idiots back in 2004, right? They were.
They're totally immersed in the game, and when they're sitting there talking, I know they're not talking about what they're doing and where they're going afterward. They're talking about the game. When they're at the stadium, they're into the game. And if you watch other teams that even are contenders, you could see that if you pan the dugout, you'll see one superstar sitting in the corner picking his nails and doing this and spitting in the corner, and another. You can just see the chemistry of a team by watching the dugout, and that's something that I think the Red Sox have always. I'll be looking for that very early in the season, because sometimes it just takes one bad apple to make a whole team.
We've seen it happen.
Many times.
Many times.
Yep. So I'll be very keenly watching the chemistry of the dugout and the team this year. But I think with at least the two very solid starting pitchers already out of the gate, I'm very optimistic.
All right, Hugh BAVER, thank you so much for coming in today and telling your story from top to bottom, pretty much. We really appreciate it. It's great to have you back. It's great to hear. It's great to hear your story, like I said, and be a part of the Michigan State baseball program still. Great to have you back. It's going to be a wonderful event again on Sunday, beginning at doors open, I believe, at 4. So fans, I believe tickets are still available. So if you got nothing to do Sunday afternoon, come on down. Great baseball stories, great event, and we look forward to it. And again, Mr. BAVER, thank you so much for coming in today out of your busy schedule and sharing your story. It was absolutely fabulous to get to know you, and we appreciate it.
Well, back at you, and this ranks right up there, even with the rest of those memories to come in and have this interview done. This is right at the top of the list. So my thanks to you and everyone here.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I'm sorry it took so long. My goodness, I think we went quite a bit.
Well, there's always does it mean it's going to go, that you have to cut it? Or
what I'll do is I'll probably make it into a, depending on how long it is, I'll just make it into a 2-parter. I mean, this whole thing is going to go on. I mean, I'll edit my mistakes. I
didn't see any mistakes, right?